This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So go. Fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. Here everyone is singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for July 7th, 2020. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or on the dedicated Open the Voice Gate podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can find us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. I am one of your hosts. It's your old pal, I'm Mike Spears. I'm joined as always by the other host, Case Lowe. And Case, how's it going today?
I've got nothing witty to say for right now on the show. I'm just doing well. I'm doing all right, kind of day by day. It's okay. And there's a lot of good happening in Japan right now, which is good. So I'm happy to be here with you, Mike, to discuss Dragon Gate.
You know, on our week-to-week, personal sanity tests, I'll take you being well and just focusing towards Japan, with how things were last month, a couple months ago. Well, that's almost being on like a hot streak right now.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I guess now, because I am currently not in therapy, that Mike every week going, Case, how are you doing? Is the most personal human interaction I have on a week-to-week basis at this point. So Mike might just be pitching it to me because it's polite when he asks me how I'm doing. But when I hear, Case, how are you doing? I take that to heart, and I really look within myself, and I give an honest answer whether the listeners want it or not.
I'm all right with being your Dr. Melfi at times. I'm all right with that being my role here. But yeah, no, it's one of those weeks that I think actually now having live wrestling to talk about kind of put a little pep in my step coming in here, especially in comparison past weeks where there was no light at the end of the tunnel. We're out of the tunnel, at least in Dragon Gate, and I feel like that's something that maybe it's a statement on myself that I do base some of my self-esteem on. Oh, hey, there's live Dragon Gate shows coming up, but that was something that it was a nice thing to this weekend get up and watch these shows.
To quote a TNA Mr. Anderson shirt, pro wrestling is real and people are fake. So if you need to attach your mental health to a Japanese professional wrestling company, Mike, I would not only encourage it, I would recommend it. And we had these two shows, Kyoto KBS Hall, this weekend. Mike, presentation-wise, we had social distancing guidelines in the crowd. Everybody had a mask. There were no intermissions. The undercard matches were shortened from a 20-minute time limit to a 15-minute time limit. Overall, what did you think of the presentation?
I mean, the only big difference that I noticed, and maybe it is that I did spend some of last week watching old Akira Tozawa matches, but the big difference was the crowd. There was no crowd calls. That was the big difference to me. It was you weren't hearing crowd calls, and you would maybe hear some verbal emotion in the crowd, but the crowd's basically kept it to applause, which totally understandable. That's the responsible thing, is the crowd call thing, especially in an indoor setting with what we know about it, to not do that. But that kind of took me aback. But the rest of it, Dragon Gate, at least in Kyoto KBS Hall, they were able to run up to about 65% occupancy. So it looked like it was a pretty full crowd. I mean, there was no crowd brawling. That was a big difference.
That should be implemented across wrestling. If one good thing comes out of COVID is that Jeff Jarrett might finally lose one. We might end the walk and brawl for good.
Yeah, but it felt like Dragon Gate, and that was one of those things that I watched the Stardom show that happened last month. That was at Shinkiba, and that felt a little bit weirder than this one did. Like, this felt like a Dragon Gate show, other than like general like little quirks that you only really know if you watch a lot of Dragon Gate, I feel like. How about you?
I completely agree. The no crowd calls thing affects, I think, the undercard matches a little bit more because there was just, I think, a bigger inclination to applaud, and the little vocal noises that were made by the audience, I think, came through with the main event guys, with the bigger stars on the roster, which makes sense. The undercard matches had a PGA Tour vibe to them where it was silence in between moves, and then a move would be hit and you would get the golf clap. It felt more apropos to, I think, the way that Chris Jericho in his first book sort of incorrectly labeled Japanese crowds. And I think Chris Jericho did a lot of generational damage talking about how quiet Japanese crowds are in that book, where it's like, if you watch anything, you're like, no, they're actually very lively and like to make noise. You just have to be good to get over there. The undercards on these shows, it was weirdly silent at times, but I was completely okay with it because the way Dragon Gate set up the building, it was clear they were following social distancing because there was kind of every other chair was filled, if that makes sense. They were leaving a one chair length space. It looked like going back in terms of the rows of chairs, that they set up less rows than normal, thus giving more space between the patrons. And it looked like it was full of people. I watched part of a J Stage show earlier today, and even though there were people there, it felt like COVID era wrestling. Like, you could tell the audience was a little uncomfortable because the building they were running was so small. There was no opportunity to follow those social distancing guidelines. So it didn't really have the same effect. But if you're looking for some sort of normalcy, I have to recommend the Dragon Gate shows because it looked and felt like the professional wrestling that we have come to, or I guess that we knew, instead of the empty arena stuff that we have come to know.
Yeah, and it did seem like, at least with KBS Hall, I did see some photos that was on social media. Them like they were doing before people got in. They had the temperature guns and they had the hand sanitizer everywhere, and they actually had like, I did see a photo of the merch area. There was a merch area here, which is not necessarily the case in certain other areas of Japan, and it was like pretty much like they were trying to do everything they could possible to like limit any kind of physical interaction whatsoever. So it's interesting like how much on screen kind of looked like you would expect, at least in this era, and then like it looked like everything outside of the ring looked drastically different in a lot of ways.
I'm someone who has not resumed any sort of social activities. I don't leave the house unless I have to go get something or have to go to, like, I went to the eye doctor last week. But watching the Kyoto shows, if I was living in that region, after watching these two shows, next time Dragon Gate comes to town in August, I would, if things stayed the same, I would feel safe attending that show. And we'll find out in, a week or two if things need to drastically change and maybe this was an error and they rolled out fans too soon. But as of now, I have zero complaints with the way they handled reintroducing fans into the shows.
Yeah, especially in comparison to what some of the North American companies have done since then. This felt a lot more safe. Like, the only other show that I've seen that with like COVID guidelines, I was like, you know what, I can maybe go to this, was the GCW show in your neck of the woods in Indianapolis.
Yeah, the show very close to my house that I did not attend. that sounds like a GCW show to me.
But it was all cool. I mean, like, the other like big one, there's like two big takeaways, and we'll get into one of them when we get into the shows itself because it relates to the cards. The other big takeaway was during the off period, we already knew that they changed out the Dream Gate with the beginning of the new year. This is linked to the licensing change and the logo change. But we have all new titles, Case. And I know that that's been something that, at least on social media, people have been trying to figure out. But a new Twin Gate, new Triangle Gate, new Brave Gate titles were displayed this show. And I have to say, as someone that took a little bit to get used to the Dream Gate titles, I really like what I've seen so far of the Brave and Triangle Gate. I still have not seen a very good photo of the Twin Gate, and I don't think I will probably until we get full cameras, just because of social media of those two champions. But I really like the new titles that they brought out. Case, what were your thoughts about them?
I think the Brave Gate looks awesome. I think the Triangle Gate looks awesome. I can't speak on the Twin Gate just yet, but it's a rebranding, which is weird because my entire Dragon Gate lifetime, which dates back to the summer of 2013, early 2014. With the exception of the strap changing on the Brave Gate at one point, those have been the titles that I've known, and they were the best looking titles in wrestling, in my opinion, with the exception of maybe the IWGP Heavyweight Belt. But change is good, even if change is scary. I like the new belts. I think they look good. I think they represent the company well, and I'm glad that they are finally updated. I was questioning myself watching the first show because I noticed the belts were new, and I was like, why? That couldn't have happened in the empty arena shows. I surely would have noticed it there. And then I had weird journalism panic where I was like, did I not mention the new title belts? And then luckily other people made note of, oh no, these are new. And I was able to ease the anxiety for a moment.
And it's something that like they very easily, since unless you know, I don't know when everything of the empty arena shows was taped. Like that stuff looked like it was months ago, to be honest.
That's a good point that we never got to the bottom of.
Yeah.
Is when they were taped. I'm assuming the first round of King of Gate looked like it was taped a week before it aired, judging from social media stuff. Everything after that, I have no idea when it was done.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that like I try to like, other than like the physical body changes of a couple wrestlers, and we get into it, like it does feel like that these shows happen, and then suddenly this was like the relaunch in a way. And then with the title belts, like Dragon Gate, other than what happened with the Dream Gate and the restrapping of the Brave Gate, those were the original Triangle Gate belts. They never changed them over 15 years or 16 years. The Twin Gate belts, those are the second edition ones, and they were falling apart. Like, I forget, it was a Big Ben match, I think, that I saw, like, one of the faceplates completely break off of, and then they had to restrap the Brave Gate because the Brave Gate strap was tearing apart, and I've seen a photo of what the new strapped Brave Gate was, and they had it for only 2 years, and it was already starting to kind of wear, so it was time. So I'm not going to object to it. I think it looks a lot better than one of the other titles that had an update this week, but I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, the only big thing that I noticed, and it's something that I don't think actually, since you've been a fan, that we've had, was a Brave Gate tournament. Like they took out the faceplate that originally broke into 8 pieces because the rule was, and this is one of those incredibly Dragon Gate rules, that the faceplate would break into 8 pieces. Each competitor in an 8-person tournament would get a piece, and you do a single elimination tournament. Winners take the losers' pieces, and finally the one person remaining would have the entire faceplate, and they would put it on, and they would be the champion. So I can't remember last time they did one of those. It might have been Naoki Tanizaki. No, there was one since Naoki Tanizaki. But
I know they did a Brave Gate tournament in 2015, but I don't remember if they did the faceplate gimmick or not for that.
Yeah, but it's like that's the only big change. They took out the gimmick. So
yeah, but they look good. So it represents a systematic change company-wide, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we break down these cards.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Case, of course, has written reviews up on Voices of Wrestling. The first show was in Kyoto KBS Hall on the 4th. Hopeful Gate is the new series name, which, you know, just kind of feels right. Attendance was 306. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, don't have the exact number of the percentage. I did see that Jay tweeted on Twitter that for both Kyoto and KBS, it looks like attendance maximum under these restrictions will be about 350, and Corkin will be, I think, close to 600, and if not, a little under. The pre-show match was Kakator defeating Ho-Ho Loon with the Kakanui in 3 minutes. I thought that was a decent enough match for a match 0. I didn't really have many thoughts on it other than this felt like a match 0 in front of a live crowd, and that was kind of nice.
Ho-Ho Loon has improved dramatically since coming into Dragon Gate, but I still think it was fucked up that after months of empty arena shows, he was the first guy to come to the ring on this show. It just felt mean-spirited to put him out there and sacrifice him in front of the audience. And then from the audience's perspective, it's like, is Yamato going to come out and cut this rallying the troops promo? Are we going to have, you know, the generations meet in the middle of the ring? No, we're going to have Ho-Ho Loon come out. It's just like, oh God, I feel so bad for everybody involved. But it was a fine match other than just the horrifically awkward entrance that occurred.
Yeah, that was something. Wow. Yeah, it just, like, Ho Ho Loon staying in Dragon Gate all year. Like, this is for him being natively from Hong Kong, hell of a year for someone from Hong Kong to be staying out of the country and just like being the first person out. And this will be like a trivia note in the future of who was the first person to wrestle a match against Calcatora in the post-COVID quarantine era. Like, that's the most I can take away from this.
I think there's going to be probably a 5-star match game question 5 years from now of who are the foreigners to stay in the dojo during quarantine, because I think at this point Jason Lee's a roster guy, but Ho Ho Loon.
No, he's full time. Yeah, he's full time.
Yeah. Ho Ho Loon and Jimmy and kind of Larry Dallas for a few months. And I think
Martin Kirby was there.
And Martin, that's right. A pandemic retired Martin Kirby. That feels like it was forever ago, but that was this year. All of these guys toughed it out. They stayed in Japan. They stayed at the dojo. And I, just knowing how Dragon Gate operates to some extent, I think they will be rewarded for that to some extent.
Yeah. And then we had the match opener, proper show opener, Dragon Gate versus Toryumon. Pretty close to one of the top teams in Dragon Gate going against Ultimo and Friends is the best way to put it. KZ, Ben-K, and Strong Machine J defeated the Toryumon team of Ultimo Dragon, Dragon Kid, and Ryo Saito. KZ got the win in 12 minutes and 13 seconds with the running elbow smash. And really, this was a solid. I give this a 3 flat on this. The opener I gave 2. Max Zero I gave 2.5. But like the really like thing that came to me in this match was like this was a match that was. These guys were easing into it. Ben-K looks more than 115 kilos. He has to be close to 120 at this point. And there was like a really cool Sairyo rocket into the Ben-K spear. And I thought that was rad. And I thought this was just like a decent opener. I mean, easing people back into it.
Ultimo in the opening match is just so much more comforting than Ultimo on the back end of the card. And it's not that he can't deliver in moments that he needs to. But when the pressure is off and there's no stakes at play, I just feel so much more comfortable having Ultimo involved in those sort of parameters on my cards. And yeah, this was a really fun match. I think you hit at the Sairyo rocket countered with the Ben-K spear, the highlight of the match. Fine. I gave it 3.25 stars in my review.
Yeah, it was fun to see it, and it's also fun to see like the younger generation guys deciding just to get really swole in this. And Ben-K at this point is getting, the thing is that his mobility is not hurt and he's not having the syndrome of not understanding his body, but it's something you look at him, you're like, that's a side of meat walking through the ring.
As long as he can move, I hope he gets bigger. Until there is a mistake, until there is an accident, and then you have to overcorrect the opposite way, I encourage him to get as big as possible.
Yeah, no, it's tremendous. I did love the photo of them for the Okinawa shows where everyone else is in their Hawaiian shirt. His Hawaiian shirt can't even fit him. Tremendous stuff.
That is a photo on my Twitter @_InYourCase. If you want to see the Dragon Gate generation posted up in their Hawaiian shirts, may I direct you to my Twitter? It is good content. It is actually good.
It's good, clean fun. It's wholesome for the whole family. I mean,
I would love to posted up.
I would love to go on their Okinawa trip. I mean, are you kidding me?
Oh my god, yes. The Okinawa shows, they made tape in I think 2014, and it was I think a triple shot that was spliced down to make one infinity, but then a ton of behind the scenes footage as well. And it was like, oh my god, this is the best company on earth. Like this is not only what wrestling should be, this is what life should be. It should be kicking it with Don Fuji and Okinawa. It is not that hard, and we have created a system on this earth that makes things so much more difficult than they should be.
Yeah, it's something that you also get the Don, the Ryukyu Islands Gurkhan mask on the shows. It's a great time. Like the idea of like a wrestling trip to Okinawa is like such a wild thing that like it's of course Dragon Gate does it, and I imagine you could go play like a round of golf with Naruki Doi. Like
yeah, I'd love that. I hate golf. I'd play golf with Naruki Doi.
I got cut from my high school golf team because I was looking for a free athletic credit. I'm that bad at golf.
I went to Top Golf with an ex-girlfriend for her father's birthday and had never really swung a golf club before, but I played baseball my whole life. I was like, well, I can figure this out. But then you realize it's the same reason I can't throw a football, because you throw a football and a baseball, in drastically different ways. You swing a golf club and a baseball bat in complete opposite forms. And that was a rough night. That was embarrassing for me and tough on my masculinity, golfing as poorly as I did in a non-competitive environment that I made super tense and super competitive.
I mean, Top Golf does that though. Like,
Oh, completely. It's in the water. You have to. You have to gear up and be ready mentally, physically, and spiritually to go to a Top Golf.
I feel like that there is a giant racket that you can make as a physiotherapist who has an office right next to a Top Golf.
Yeah, no, I bet you can. That is the Mike Spears perspective for sure.
How can I scam people? That's right. All right. Match 2 was a Dragon Gate versus RED match. It was Punch Tominaga teaming with Dragon Dia against BB Hulk and Diamante. Diamante got the win with the Vuelta finale in 11 minutes 39 seconds on Punch Tominaga. Pretty much like what you expected. Diamante in the time off has like a new mask and gear that looks awesome, by the way. Like he updated his look during the time off. I thought that looked pretty rad. And you know, Diamante and Dia I felt like had pretty solid chemistry between the two of them.
Yeah, not only did Diamante improve his look, he's just improved as the entire package. I no longer cringe at seeing his name on the card. Maybe it's because the last few times we've seen him, he's either been in the ring with Ultimo, Dragon Kid, or Dragon Dia, which he seems to have better chemistry with those three than anybody else on the roster. I mean, he's on the roster to wrestle Ultimo to make Ultimo look good, but outside of that, he's developed chemistry with a few guys where he can, shine and make his spots look good and make the other guys' spots look good. And I think that was the case in this match where he and Dragon Dia played really well off of each other, and BB Hulk and Punch Tominaga were just more so there. And this was, fine for me in the review. I gave it 2 3/4 stars. I thought it was an all right match.
Yeah, I went with 3. A lot of the thing about these two shows were nothing was bad. There was a couple matches that teamed out at very good to me, but like this was a very consistently solid 2 nights of shows.
Very fun, very quick. I guess we could talk about this more when we go into the overview, but
Yeah.
It's just they were so simply constructed. It was so nice to see. It was so engaging that it feels disingenuous to say you could turn your mind off and watch this. But if you're looking to parachute into the company, or even if you just have a very casual understanding of the roster, these shows are very watchable, and I think you'll be able to pick up on some things and latch onto some guys as we progress into the new era of Dragon Gate.
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty strong takeaway. And then talking about new era of Dragon Gate, we had Dragon Gate versus RED, Kota Minoura versus Big R Shimizu. This turned out to be a little bit of a trial series for Kota Minoura this weekend, as came out, he is the new recipient of the Dangerous Tights. That was a reference that I think I made on Twitter that not a lot of people thought that was kind of funny. No, they're actually called Dangerous Tights. In case you know why they're called Dangerous Tights?
I don't know, Mike. Please explain it to me.
You've heard this thrown around though before me, right?
I've heard Gabe Zapolsky yell dangerous, but I have a feeling you have a different meaning.
So I've picked this up, I think, from Jay, and it's the idea of a guy going from like normal like pants or like shorts into the very high cut tights. Like Naruki Doi is like the first person to really do it when he dropped second Doi and started wearing tights. Hyo has done it, and I remember Jay making a comment about that. And now Kota Minoura has done it. And I mean, it's a look that like he has good gear. It's like a good look, but it's like one of those things that you could tell like sometimes when they do like the cut there, it's like, all right, they're going to try to see if they can make a heartthrob out of this kid.
Yeah, the gear looks good, but I don't like the gear on him. Because Minoura, and this is something that, we just passed the 2-year anniversary of his debut, and he came into the company as a black tights young boy in July. I believe by September he had gear, and then by September or October was in Mochizuki Dojo. So he progressed really quickly, and he had the gear that was black and yellow with the gears on it. And that, I'm sure that would have looked great adopted to the more Dragon Gate generation color scheme. I just think this looks too similar to what other guys on the roster have. Again, a Doi-like figure wears tights very similar to Minoura, and I think he lost a little bit of individuality with these.
I think that's fair to say. I did also see a couple people throwing the Yamato Sito comped onto him wearing these tights. No, the Yamato Sito would be Takedo Kamei.
Yes, very much so.
Very much so. But he had a 15-minute draw of Big R Shimizu, who, someone that I noticed, actually, a lot of people were bulking up. Big R Shimizu's looking a little slimmed down a little bit, you know? He's looking like that he's maybe took all the weight he lost, went on to Big R Shimizu. Or on Benkei.
I would love to know what Shimizu was doing during quarantine, because
yes.
It's not like he's cracking open a book. Like, I've read 3 books this summer. I've never read 3 books in a summer before, and my summer is not technically over yet. Okay, I go back to school in August. We know just enough about him. He's not reading War and Peace. Is that what the book's called? I think that's what the book.
That is what the book's called.
As soon as I said it, I was like, "Oh God, that doesn't sound right."
No, War and Peace is right.
He's not cracking open a book. I don't feel like he's sitting down and watching the evening news. And if he's not eating, because that would be the go-to, is like Shimizu comes back and he's bigger than ever before, but he's not, as you said. So we've got to get to the bottom of what he spent his time doing. But while we don't know that, we do know that he went to a 15-minute time limit draw here with Minoura in a match that, from what I have read, the company seemed to really like. Casey in particular pointed out that he really enjoyed this match. I think from the comments of other Twitter users that I saw, I seem to be the low man on this match.
Okay.
And it's not that I didn't like it. I thought the last half of the match, we'll say just because it was 15 minutes, the last 750 of the match, I'll say I really enjoyed. But it, much like the other Minoura match that we'll talk about, it just took so long to get to that point that I felt almost paralyzed in my star rating of like, I don't know what to do about this, because it's not like it was a classic Dreamgate match where you can overlook 10 minutes of sort of boring mat wrestling because the last 20 are going to be so over the top and engaging and world class that like that is the bulk of the match. This was a good match that just started so slow that I'm amazed they were able to turn it around and produce something really worthwhile and engaging out of it. But I didn't like the first portion of this match at all. So I ended up giving it 3 stars, and a few days removed from the show, I'm not sure if that's too low now. I'm not sure if I need to stand by my star rating here. I don't know what to make of this match, and we haven't talked about these shows at all, so I'm curious as to what you thought about it.
Case, this was, with the exception of the Night 2 main event, my match of the weekend.
Wow, man. See, I gotta
let me sell you on this.
Yes, please, because I think you already have. I think I made a mistake here, but please sell me on it.
So I do think that the match against Susumu the next night was a little bit slower. I thought that this was a very subtle first 7 minutes, as emphasized by Minoura was going on the attack on this one. He was going after Shimizu's leg, and Shimizu did a lot of really subtle kind of leg and knee selling, where like he'd be like working it out. Like it's not like the overwrought, like I can't use my leg, but it was like he would do a move and then like he'd get up, he'd roll his ankle around, you know how people do after you tweak an ankle. Like he like sold it like that, and it kind of really built up into this pitch that like you're right, the last 7 minutes were them going completely at it, but I felt like the first 7 minutes was set up for him wearing down someone who's known as like being like the one of the premier power fighters in the company. He was like, I can't take this guy out with punches. I'm a guy who's known for my suplexes. I can't suplex him. He might be 60 pounds heavier than I am. And I felt like that was really kind of smart, and I thought that this was a match that like if he grows up, and you could tell like this weekend, we will get into the major storylines going out of this when we talk about stuff going into next weekend's shows. I feel like one of them big storylines that they kind of just thrown at us is Kota Minoura going to grow up and step up? Because I felt like this is a match that like I could see him grow up, and he was never someone that I would put a tag like other people where I think like, oh, future Dreamgate champion or possible like franchise player. He was someone that I kind of saw as like a number 2, number 3, like a good tag team partner like this. And you know, if he got it together, I'm like, you know what? Maybe he could become a Dream Key challenger. He could be a pay-per-view main eventer. I'm not going to throw future ace on it, but this was a match that like is starting to have me reassess my projection on where Kota Minoura might be. And I thought that Big R Shimizu had as much as that as well, with him doing like more of a subtle powerhouse thing in that first 8 minutes, and then that kind of let them go full bore for the last 7.
Coming out of these shows, Minoura, with the exception of one other guy, Minoura is the person that I have my eyes on for the upcoming shows we have, I guess, next week. Because, yeah, there's a ton of intrigue as to just the way he was booked, the way he was positioned, that I think you have to pay attention to, because I think, and you mentioned the similar tights earlier, I think the fair comparison might be a less charismatic Naruki Doi, because if Doi did not have the just overflowing and overwhelming charisma that he has, he's probably not a two-time Dream Gate champion. He's probably still a multiple-time Twin Gate champion, Triangle Gate champion, a Brave Gate champion at points, and is somebody that could challenge for the Dream Gate, but he probably doesn't win the top prize in the company unless he's able to speak the way that he does. And my understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is Minoura, it's not that he's a bad promo, but he doesn't exactly light the world on fire on the mic the way Naruki Doi does. Coming out of this weekend, it's certainly, I'm not ready for a full reevaluation of that comp, but I certainly have to look at him a little bit closer and go, okay, what is his next step? Because it is very clear, and he got lucky. He was not supposed to be in this match. Yosuke Santa Maria was set to square off against Shimizu. She got hurt in training, so Minoura stepped in, and coming away from the weekend, it seems like they have a whole new perspective on what this guy is capable of. So I'm very, very curious to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, and when we get into the show rundown for next week, it definitely does seem like there has been a reassessment where there was not necessarily someone being fully in the cards as he was before. And it's interesting, like you, like I'm not completely changing my projection on the guy, but this was a match and this was a weekend that I could see my mind being changed, and I could see like a glimmer of like top field projection, whereas I did not see it for him before.
My last note on this match is ultimately Minoura's really good, and we've known that for a long time. Again, he progressed really, really quickly on the undercards.
Right.
He just happens to be in a time in the company where Shun Skywalker and, to an extent, UT and Kaito Ishida have just blown the normal way we think of progression out of the water. They've completely reframed how guys elevate up the cards and how they deliver and this and that. So he's almost wrong place, wrong time, because I think if Minoura comes in even 2 years earlier in the Watanabe and the Shun Skywalker and the oh man, I can't think of the other guys in that Korakuen tag match. There's the one guy that had the eye issues that didn't wrestle much. What was his name?
Katsumi Takashita.
Yeah, Mike, you're the best. That's why we do the podcast. Katsumi Takashima is exactly it. I think if he would have come in there, Minoura had the basics down quicker than Skywalker did or Yo did. I think maybe even faster than Yuki Yoshioka did. But he's just now at the wrong place at the wrong time, where there are guys his generation that just have figured stuff out and have progressed rapidly up the card. So not in terms of his booking, because I think he is respected, but in terms of the way we look at him, he's fallen out of favor just by comparison, not by performance.
Kasumi Takashima, not Takashita.
I had
to correct that. But yes, this is Kasumi Shima. Yeah, but no, it's interesting because he and it's because like the people that he like debuted around were soon after you had Daya, and then 6 months later you had Strong Machine J, and he was just kind of there. And I think that was like a huge takeaway for me in a lot of ways about him. And then now with Skywalker and Yoshioka in Mexico, and with everyone else kind of doing things, it kind of is his time to see what kind of he is, you know?
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. The next match we had was, usually this would have been like, and it did feel like your pre-intermission main event. It was a tag match of Yamato and Kai versus the Mochizuki team of Masaki Mochizuki and Susumu Yokosuka, formerly Susumu Mochizuki. And Yamato got the pin on Masaki Mochizuki. And something that like I've kind of been taking away from this over like the last few months is it does seem like that Masaki Mochizuki, as he's doing a little bit more with Pro Wrestling Noah, I don't think that he's going to leave. It just does seem like that he's now kind of taking the step back. And that was something that I kind of felt like in this match, that I thought this was a really fun match. Yamato got the pin on Mochizuki in 13 minutes and 5 seconds with the Frankensteiner of Almighty. And I thought that this was a pretty I thought this was kind of funny, like that they all started to cape Kenji Muto, of course, Kai being a Muto student, and Masaki Mochizuki now teaming with Kenji Muto in Pro Wrestling Noah. I thought that was kind of funny.
I don't think it's fair to say that Mochizuki is being phased out in any sort of long-term way.
Right.
But
I just think focus is
yeah. No, it's, and I mentioned this in the review. There's no canonical reason for this match to happen because Susumu is Toryumon Generation and Mochizuki is not. Mochizuki's unaffiliated, so he was obviously slated in Noah at the start of the year, won the tag titles on the first Noah show of the year. How long he was supposed to be at Noah, who knows? Because obviously their booking plans, just like everybody else's, got, blown up and destroyed and, in some cases forgotten about. But yeah, Mochizuki's become a featured player in Noah. It's a shame that Noah has the worst empty arena presentation there is. And besides that, I'm not exactly pumped to watch Pro Wrestling Noah in 2020 anyways. So where Mochizuki is making tape maybe more than Dragon Gate this year, not in terms of matches wrestled, but in terms of matches aired, it's a shame that I'm not watching a ton of it. But yeah, no, this was fun. It's the first time Mochizuki and Susumu have teamed together in 2 years. They teamed on the January 2018 Korakuen, which had the Desmond Xavier, Zachary Wentz versus Bandito Flamita match, which gained a whole bunch of Western eyeballs at the time. I don't know. Well, I guess there's been Pac matches. Pac Casey probably got as much Western attention as that, but it was nice to see them team again. It's always nice to see Kai and Yamato, who have just developed bizarrely good chemistry. And I talked earlier about Diamante and how he's improved. And I should probably stop saying it because I feel like I've said it a lot recently. But Kai is fun to watch. And it's weird. And it's weird that he has a Dragon Gate Generation t-shirt. Like, again, Mochizuki, who has put this company on his back and has crawled for this company. When the Generational Warfare came in, Mochizuki was like, you know what? I'm not a Toryumon guy. I'm going to step away from the spotlight. Kai, who showed up as Shingo's friend 2 years ago, said, give me that Dragon Gate Generation t-shirt. I am Dragon Gate. It has proceeded to have a really fun year in the company, and this match was much of the same.
You know what was the real turning point with me and Kai and Dragon Gate?
What was that?
It was him teaming with UT. Like that.
Yeah.
That was like the thing. I was like, all right, we have like these two kind of goofy, like they're in Tribe Vanguard, but not really like fully in Tribe Vanguard. I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is a great time. And I was like having a great time with it. And he's just kind of like, he seems like everyone likes him. He seems like he's an absolute sweetheart, which, is one of my highest forms of praise is to call someone an absolute sweetheart. And he has like this very like him and Yamato like doing like the in-ring promo at the end of the second show felt very like, you know what, like there's a little bit like of how Doyoshi always have like the kind of charming like back and forth chemistry. These two kind of have it too. He fits in there, and I do love the King of Freedom t-shirt that he has.
Think about all of just the bad luck that Kai has had in his career. I mean, Wrestle 1 was supposed to be built around Kai, and that obviously didn't work out. He's a Muto trainee who has just never really amounted to anything. Before coming to Dragon Gate, his biggest success might have been you cheering him at the House of Glory show when he was desperately confused as to what was happening. I mean, this is a guy that just couldn't get over anywhere he went. I hated him coming into Dragon Gate because you have to remember, other than Shingo's final match in the company where he lost to BB Hulk, Shingo's final singles match in Dragon Gate was a loss to Kai at Dangerous Gate 2018, and a match that was pretty bad. And Kai came in teaming with Hiroshi Yamato, and they were just working Korakuens for a while, and I did not like that team. I didn't think they brought anything to the table. I didn't like their chemistry with one another. Hiroshi Yamato sort of fizzled out. I don't remember the last time we saw him. And Kai, on the other hand, just seems like he loves wrestling for Dragon Gate. And it is genuinely heartwarming to see. And it's nice to see a guy who has taken a ton of shit throughout his entire career. It is nice to see him have a platform where he seems to be pushed, respected, and most importantly, he seems to be enjoying it. It is a really nice story when you think about it. Kai succeeding in Dragon Gate.
And it's just one of those things. It's heartwarming seeing like how he is. Like I was more into Hiroshi Yamato when he came in because he was kind of charming. He was bad, but he was charming. And like Kai,
he had the entrance that at least got him over in Cork, and whereas Kai had nothing.
yeah, but Kai, maybe it is that everyone said we're going to stick with him, and then he finally kind of completely stuck together, and I think that's really great. I love Kai now, a big Kai fan. Do not regret making him feel awkward at House of Glory for cheering for him vehemently. And speaking of things that I am not ashamed of loving, match 5, Dragon Gate versus RED. We have the Kisuke Okuda, Jason Lee team that's been getting a lot of time together over the last few weeks, going up against Kaito Ishida and Kazuma Sakamoto. And then the 2020 feud of the year has taken another turn, and it's a very interesting one, as in 10 minutes and 15 seconds, Kaito Ishida got the pin on Jason Lee after an accidental high kick from Kisuke Okuda. In case, I know the two of us have been waving this flag here, but this is the most interesting thing going on in wrestling today.
It is a stunningly good feud that feels like old school in the way it's been built. Like, I feel like we are getting angles out of Okuda and Ishida. I mean, their empty arena brawl on the March 22nd show, which is the fun empty arena show. I still think top to bottom, the March 22nd empty arena show is the best empty arena wrestling there's been. AEW has had some good output. New Japan has obviously had some good output. I've heard good stuff from All Japan. I still think 322 is the best that's come to empty arena presentation. And part of that was the Okuda Ishida brawl that just felt completely foreign to anything Dragon Gate typically does. It felt violent, and it felt urgent, and it felt intense. And since then, they have built this feud that is just delightful. And this is by no means a great match, but it was a great piece of storytelling on the road to, I think, what has to be Okuda beating Ishida for the Brave Gate title. But Mike, I will ask you the question. Ishida seems to have a change of heart. He doesn't hate Keisuke Okuda as much as now he wants him to join RED. Mike, do you see that happening?
I love this turn. It might be because of Indeed USA, we're in 2011 now, and that's the height. We're getting to the height of like Blood Warriors and the constant turning there. I love that this doubt's put in here. And of course, he's teaming with Jason Lee, and he's been kind of like, sadly for Jason Lee, it seems like him teaming with Kisuke Okuda is being more trouble than it's worth. Like there's all kinds of shenanigans. He gets kicked in the head. It just seems like the real thing. But could I see Okuda turning and joining RED? I think it'd be very interesting. I don't know. I don't think that adding Okuda to RED would do anything else other than be interesting when RED has bigger problems at hand.
I think it would be deflating because I really think the way to cap off this feud is Okuda in the ring with the Brave Gate belt over his head. I am salivating for not only that image, but for that match. Like, that is what needs to come of all this. It's been built so well thus far, and it's not that I don't trust Dragon Gate, if they do turn him, to do a good turn, to have an interesting angle, to make it effective. It's just not what I want. I am ready to see Okuda choke this kid out, get his title, and move on to the next challenger. I think that is the much better story in this feud, and I think that is what will happen.
I think that's what will happen. I do think, though, if you turn Okuda, then you could have Benkei versus Okuda.
You could have Benkei versus Okuda, and that is very interesting for a number of reasons, mainly the fact that they are shoot best friends. They have, I guess, prior pro wrestling experience with one another. It would be fascinating, but I also think you have the next decade to do that match. I don't think you need it in this story right now. It would be interesting. I'd like to see it, but not as much as I'd like to see Okuda eventually outlast and outfight Ishida.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. But this is a storyline that I'm gonna be excited to see go on. I'm glad they didn't drop it. Like, there's a chance that after the Brave Gate match that could have been it. And again, this is the best thing that, like, they were able to do this in empty arena shows and keep this feud really hot. That, I mean, I'm excited to see what could happen, like, with how the lineups are coming out here. Could maybe have a rematch in Wakayama. Like, there's a lot of places they can go with this that I'd be really stoked about. So, getting to the main event, this was, of course, Doyoshi and X versus Eita, Yoshida, and Hyo. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you would know that X ended up being Shuji Kondo, making his return to the Dragon Gate ring. Later, we'd know that he's an official Dragon Gate roster member, and he's finally home after 16 years and a lot of consternation. And, this is really the big piece from Aigon Iso coming back, and he's teaming with his generational peers, Naruki Doi, Masato Yoshino, against the RED team. The fall, if I was going to tell you, Case, beforehand, so we're going to get Doyoshi and Kondo versus Eita, Yoshida, and Hyo, what would you book to be the result there?
I like Yo. I think he's a nice guy. Yo would be eating that pin from a King Kong lariat with no hesitation for me. I've got the pencil, and that is what I've decided to book. And luckily, the powers that be, the pencil pushers in Dragon Gate, decided the same fate.
Absolutely. 14 minutes and 12 seconds for the King Kong lariat. And boy, it's something where Hyo flew around saying oh, Big Brother's coming back. I need to make sure Big Brother looks good here. And that was my huge takeaway. And it just really made Kondo as the premier power fighter of the generation coming in and just throwing people around. It was exactly what I wanted to. Getting to Yoshida's face. The next night, him and Benkei had a lot of face-offs. And boy, is it great to have Shuji Kondo back in Dragon Gate.
So you were a fan of his output. You think he looked good this weekend?
I felt you can never beat time. That's the only game in town that everyone loses. But, for 40 years old, I felt that he fit in there. And I mean, there's going to be bumps in the road, and there is him, readjusting to the house style. Wrestle 1 did have a quick pace, but it was not the Dragon Gate house pace. And I felt that he acquitted himself well, and I'm interested to see where he can go here. This isn't where other people have come back, and I'm all right, I've seen them go away.
Yeah, Kondo's 42, and I think the rep for him for a few years now has been that he's slowed down and his best days are behind him. And I think both of those points are fair. And I started racking my brain of okay, when was the last time Kondo, outside of Dragon Gate, where he's been very good since he came back last January and had a match with Mochizuki that I kind of think, 18 months removed, is maybe underrated a little bit. He had a great match